Okay, so you want to own a Bugatti. Not drive one for 15 minutes. Not rent one for a weekend. Own one. Park it in your garage. Open the door at night. See that shape sitting there like a piece of industrial royalty. You're not looking at transportation anymore. You're looking at theater, engineering, and controlled scarcity wrapped into one object. From the outside, Bugatti ownership looks like pure fantasy. The hotel arrivals, the crowd reaction, the photos, the absurd numbers, the feeling that you somehow bought the final boss of the car world. And honestly, that dream is real. Because when executed correctly, owning a Bugatti is not just emotional consumption. It is an elite asset strategy. A Bugatti can function like a luxury balance sheet instrument, part collectible, part brand signal, part rolling store of prestige, and in the right part of the market cycle, a very powerful value retention machine. The newest tourbillon is exactly the kind of product that proves the point. Bugatti says just 250 examples will be built, starting at 3.8 million euros net, while Car and Driver reports a starting price around $4.6 million with 1,775 horsepower, a zero, 60 time of about 2.0 seconds, and roughly 30 miles of electric range. That is not a car. That is a curated scarcity event with wheels. And that's the first big shift you have to make if you want to understand the math of owning a Bugatti. You are not buying utility. You are buying a concentrated form of attention, engineering pedigree, and supply limitation. That matters because assets with microscopic supply and global demand do not behave like normal consumer goods. They behave more like cultural trophies with price discovery. And when the market respects the badge, the model, and the provenance, that badge can become a very serious economic lever. So yes, the dream is real. If you enter at the right level, preserve the car correctly, and understand what the market actually values, Bugatti ownership can be one of the most fascinating high-end asset plays on Earth. Expensive? Absolutely. But scalable in prestige, durable in desirability, and in the best cases, incredibly efficient at converting capital into a rare kind of long-term optionality. That is what makes this story so exciting. Now let's talk about the giant wall you have to climb to get in. A Bugatti does not let casual money through the door. The purchase price is only the handshake. After that, you still have taxes, transport, climate-controlled storage, insurance, specialist servicing, and the discipline to keep the car documented and pristine. On paper, those numbers look outrageous. In reality, they're one of the most brilliant parts of the entire ownership model because they create a moat. They keep the asset inside a very small circle of owners who can actually maintain it to standard. That is exactly what you want if you're holding something whose value depends on condition, scarcity, and reputation. Look at the numbers. The Drive reports Bugatti recommends annual Veyron fluid changes costing about $25,000. Tires are about $38,000 a set every 2 to 3 years, and wheels are recommended for replacement every 10,000 miles at roughly $50,000. Put those together and that ownership cycle can reach $113,000 over 24 months. That sounds wild until you realize what it does economically. It filters out weak operators, under-maintained cars, and bargain hunters who would otherwise destroy the long-term integrity of the market. High carrying cost is not just an expense here. It's quality control enforced by physics and factory standards. The Chiron shows the same logic, just in a more refined form. Motor One reports Bugatti covers the first 4 years of maintenance on the car, then annual service runs about $11,500, with a 4-year major service at $34,000. Over the next 6 years, maintenance totals about $91,500, and one set of tires pushes that figure to around $100,000. Again, most people hear that and panic. You should hear something else. Standardization, traceability, and asset protection. These are the systems that help separate a preserved hypercar from a deteriorating one. And that is the positive truth about the barrier to entry. The upfront cost is not there to punish you. It is there to protect you. It protects the brand. It protects the fleet. It protects resale standards. It protects provenance. Bugatti itself said that after the last Veyron in the limited 450-car run was sold, a significant increase in value was observed, and the company described a certified Bugatti not just as the jewel in a collection, but as a sound investment. That is what a moat looks like in the real world. Expensive to cross, incredibly valuable once you're inside. Here's the reveal. A Bugatti does not really sell speed. Speed is the headline. Scarcity is the product. That is the genius of the whole model. A Bugatti is a mechanical object, yes, but economically, what you are really buying is constrained supply plus globally legible prestige. Bugatti says the Veyron was capped at 450 units. Bugatti said the Chiron's total series would remain strictly limited to 500 vehicles. And Bugatti says the Tourbillon will be limited to 250 examples. That means you are participating in a market where supply is not just low, it is permanently tiny. In finance terms, that's incredible. You have a hard cap on production and a soft, global demand curve driven by wealth creation, status, collecting behavior, and brand mythology. So what does a Bugatti actually sell? 3 things. First, it sells scarcity. Second, it sells provenance. Third, it sells optionality. Scarcity means you can't flood the market. Provenance means factory service, certification, mileage, and spec create real separation between average and exceptional cars. Optionality means you are never holding just a machine. You are holding a collectible, an event invitation, a brand amplifier, a showroom centerpiece, and in the strongest cases, a tradable asset that can appreciate precisely because so few top-tier examples exist. And once you understand that, the cost structure starts looking brilliant. The biggest cost is fixed, acquisition. After that, your variable costs, service, tires, storage, insurance, transport, are large in absolute terms, but often small relative to the value of the asset itself. If you're holding a multi-million-dollar car, a 5-figure annual service bill is no longer the story. It becomes the maintenance fee on scarcity. That is an incredibly important shift. In other words, once the capital is deployed, the economics get cleaner than they first appear. The market data reinforces this beautifully. Classic.com currently shows a benchmark market price of about $1,910,563 for the Bugatti Veyron EB 16.4, $2,461,525 for the Veyron Grand Sport, $2,955,461 for the base, Chiron, $3,180,057 for the Chiron Sport, $4,463,906 for the Chiron Supersport, and $10,690,854 for the ultra-rare Chiron Profile. That is not random pricing. That is a highly stratified luxury asset ladder. Spec, rarity, and narrative are being priced with serious precision. That's exactly the kind of structure you want in a collectible market, because it means buyers are not just shopping for horsepower, they're pricing hierarchy. And above that ladder sits the halo layer, the one-off tier. Car and Driver reported the Bugatti La Voiture Noire at $12.5 million before taxes, or about $18.9 million including them. That number matters because it sets the top of the pyramid. Once the market accepts a Bugatti one-off at that altitude, it strengthens the aura of everything beneath it. That halo effect is economically powerful. It tells every buyer lower down the stack that they are not just buying a car. They are buying into a cultural category with enormous price elasticity at the top end. Now picture the Goodyear scenario. You buy the right Bugatti, the right model, the right color, the right history, the right mileage band. You service it exactly the way the factory wants. You keep the paperwork immaculate. You avoid turning a rare asset into an overused toy. And then time starts doing what time does best for scarce collectibles. It removes supply, highlights the best examples, and rewards owners who stayed disciplined. That is when the math starts to feel fantastic. If it's a Tourbillon, the first 4 years of maintenance coverage already improved the ownership equation. If it's a Veyron or Chiron, the market has already shown it understands rarity in layers. Exceptional cars separate from merely expensive ones. Certified cars separate from neglected ones. Special editions separate from base cars. And when the market is healthy, that separation compounds. Your fixed acquisition cost starts to work for you because the asset is sitting inside a category where supply is capped, prestige is durable, and buyer desire is global. That is the beautiful part of Bugatti ownership. The machine is spectacular, but the economics are even more interesting. Smart management plus radical scarcity plus top-tier branding creates a model where the owner is not simply spending money. The owner is curating an asset. In the best years, you get the emotional return of ownership, the social return of visibility, and the financial return of holding something the world simply cannot make more of on demand. That is a very rare combination. And that is why, for the right buyer, a Bugatti can be an incredible wealth preservation play disguised as the most dramatic car in the room. So how much money do you actually need to afford a Bugatti? Tier 1. Building from scratch, buying the absolute best. If you want the new generation Bugatti experience, Car and Driver says the 2026 Tourbillon starts around $4,600,000, while Bugatti says it starts at 3.8 million euros net and only 250 will be built. if you want absolute apex ownership, the kind of deal that becomes automotive folklore. La Voiture Noire was reported at $12,500,000 before taxes and about $18,900,000 including taxes. So Tier 1 is simple. You need $4.6 million to enter new Bugatti territory and $12.5 million to $18.9 million if you want the best of the best one-off level. Tier 2. Buying a mid-market or turnaround asset. If you want a more accessible private buyer route, the current market benchmarks are powerful. Classic.com shows the Veyron EB 16.4 at about $1,910,563, the Veyron Grand Sport at about $2,461,525, and the base Chiron at about $2,955,461. My view? To afford one responsibly, you should add a reserve for transport, storage, insurance, and early maintenance. That means thinking in all-in terms of roughly $2.05 million for a Veyron EB 16.4, $2.6 million for a Grand Sport, and $3.1 million to $3.2 million for a base Chiron. That is the real private buyer entry zone. Tier 3, the retail investor route. This is where it gets interesting. Bugatti itself is not a simple public stock you can just buy in a brokerage account. And Porsche announced in 2026 that it agreed to sell its stakes in Bugatti Rimac and Rimac Group, which makes the clean public equity shortcut even less direct. So for everyday investors, the practical under $100 route is fractional exposure to collectible cars rather than direct Bugatti ownership. MCQ Markets has marketed collector car access starting at $20 per share, and Rally's App Store listing says users can start as low as $10 per share. So if you want a concrete retail answer, the entry ticket is $20, and $100 gives you enough room to build a small position across collectible vehicle offerings. So the math of owning a Bugatti comes down to 4 numbers. $20 to start learning the collectible car game, roughly $2 million to enter true Bugatti ownership, $4.6 million to buy into the new generation, and $12.5 million plus to own the kind of Bugatti that rewrites the market. And that is why the Bugatti story is so compelling. Yes, it is extravagant, but at the highest level, it is also an extraordinarily well-designed scarcity asset.